So Ben says 45 minutes.
Good, good.
Max.
He's gonna hug you if we don't.
I got more work to do.
He's gonna come over and hug you if we.
Sick, are you? Okay. Oh, okay.
I wouldn't be here.
About 2 months ago, I was riding in a car with somebody, and then like a couple days later, they were like, "Oh, hey, by the way, I had COVID." I was like, "Thanks." So let me just test every couple days now. About a week.
Right, we're all set.
Didn't end up having it though. All right. So we'll go ahead and call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. Go ahead with the roll call.
Ryan Green,
Here.
Ron Dane.
Here.
Jesse Koppel,
Here.
Ron Merriman,
Here.
Henley.
Here.
All right. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Move on to public comment on matters not on tonight's agenda. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to approval of the minutes from November 9th. I'll make a motion to approve as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll move on to application Z-21-186. The variance on 144 Payne Street.
Mr. Chairman, if I could step down from the board temporarily and address as a public.
Yes, please.
And I'm gonna go ahead and give our zoning inspector, Jim Belair, the go ahead to introduce this project and give some background on it.
This is a lot at 144 Payne Street, and it's 3,750 square feet. It's a very small lot. In 2013, there was a vacant, abandoned carryout building on that lot. And I was able to get federal funds to tear it down. And it was quite a project, very interesting. It was the first one I tore down in Johnstown. And then the lot was put up for sale, and a person bought it. And at that point in time, he planned to build on it, but he never did. I think it's changed hands 2 or 3 times. When we had the federal funds for tearing the house down, we got it to Newark, and it was cigarette. It was cigarette money that was came from the feds, and we were one of the only places in Licking County to apply for it. But one of the things that they emphasize with Jim Leonard and myself is when you tear down a property on a lot in an older neighborhood, becoming an infill lot, and then you try and work with somebody to put something new on it, and it's not going to fit in your codes. And that's what we have with this lot here and this project. And we also happen to have the architect that designed it here.
Money was aware of this, we purchased a lot.
Basically, what we're asking for is a reduction in the minimum side yards from 7.5 feet to 6 feet on both sides. And a reduction in the front yard setback from 10 feet less, from 35 feet to 25 feet. Reduction in the rear yard setback from 25 feet to just over. That will allow him to build. He basically tried to do the smallest possible footprint. The nice part of the house, so that basically if you draw a line, left to the right, draw that across. Give them a little bit of backyard, still under the lot coverage. Basic slab on grade. Architectural need the.
Okay, that's what I was looking for, because I knew UR2 comes in there somewhere.
And it's bordered by the alley, plus it also comes with a water and sewer tap.
Researching this, we dug up the original plat of this. It's a bunch of lots, 5 feet wide by like 150 feet deep, and it's been divided, subdivided. And just taking it back. 3 lots. Back. 3 lots.
One other little caveat to building it there, you can see the house that would be beside it, which sits on Jersey. It has a sidewalk. And this, by building this house there, a sidewalk would be required and 25 foot by a 16-foot driveway. So it would give you sidewalk on Payne there from the alley to Jersey. So which is a nice thing to have.
As far as fire code with this, 'cause that's what I was gonna ask, what happened to the last building, so I see that in there, but fire code with this. What are we looking at?
Anything under 5 feet, you have to do the park laws. Where it's 6 feet.
Okay.
Neighbor to the northwest.
They are gonna do sidewalks on the property, on both sides, around both sides of the corner there.
I think he only has to do it on Payne. I don't think he has to do it on the alley.
No, just on
That
Payne.
makes sense. Okay, gotcha.
And you'll have to do a concrete approach.
There's a bunch of asphalt that's up in the front.
It was a pull-up, it was a head-in parking lot in front of the building for the carryout.
I don't remember it being a carryout.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it a permitted carryout?
I don't know. It was a carryout when we moved to Johnstown 50 years ago, and
All right, there you go. All right.
it had multiple owners.
Rezoning.
Just a picture of it, or this one?
Zoning.
Yeah, that's it.
What's the measurement difference from this building to the previous building?
The
You have that?
previous building was up close. It was identical, almost identical to the neighbor property. Right up. We get back further than that.
You're gonna have a further back setback. You said you're gonna have the same setback as the property next to it.
Yeah, we kind of drew a line right between these two and put the house right here. But it'll
Okay.
be back.
So it's the structure's 35 by 15, is that?
Building itself is, the new one is 38 wide
By 30, 29 point something.
29, yeah, 29.8 inches deep. Wide. Yeah, he originally wanted to do a ranch, but there was nowhere.
Yeah, first he submitted a ranch and I told him that wasn't going to work. So he took it back and came up with this one. The good thing about putting a new house in a older neighborhood is it kind of brings the whole neighborhood up. And usually from that, you get other improvements made on other properties.
I'd say in the last 5 to 8 years, there's been a decent amount of revitalization back in that area.
There certainly has been.
Newer homes built on
Yes.
some infill lots, some homes that have been
And some homes flipped.
renovated and sold and what have you.
Right now, yeah.
I'd say what sticks out to me with this is number one, you get a 2-story home on this. That's impressive to begin with. But the metrics for UR2 to what is being presented really aren't that different, to be honest, in my opinion. The differences aren't that severe. The front setback I have at 30 feet.
Yeah, for UR2, it is 30 on. You said 35, but that's for UR1.
I wanted to clarify that because in my opinion, I mean, that's makes up half the difference that you're talking about before. That's a better situation.
Yeah.
The side yard setbacks aren't huge for me. The minimum, the rear yard is less than 5 feet, not a big deal. I think we've had variances where we've approved over digs and things like that that have encroached on the
Correct.
rear yard setbacks. And the fact that really, when you look at the percentages, a lot of what we try and promote is green space, and lot coverage is a big metric. And the fact that the lot coverage max for this is 35% and you're proposing 30%, to me, weights a little bit higher, and that makes a big difference for me.
Yeah, the ratio is just different.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, so some of the setbacks may be different, but the lot coverage piece is big. And that feels good to me. The biggest thing is really you look at UR2 and the minimum square footage that we have there relative to what's being proposed is different. The question that I would have for staff before I just hit the variance considerations, has there been any phone calls, any feedback or anything from the public?
No, the contingent letters were sent out and they have plenty of time to respond, and I have no response.
We have a public.
I'm sorry. Okay.
We'll definitely have you come up here to the podium here in a minute, because we want to hear from the neighborhood community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, as far as the overall square footage on this, so you have to have a minimum of 7,500 square foot lot. What's the current square feet of this lot?
3750.
Okay. So the lot doesn't even work. The lot works against you in this one. That's what I said, to get the measurements out of this that you have, because it's not a huge variance. But the lot works against you, as do most of them in that neighborhood. I think most of them in the neighborhood wouldn't even work for the zoning that we have today.
The closest house to it, facing it off the alley there, is much smaller. That lot is.
Okay.
The only way in my mind that you'd obfuscate this variance with respect to the lot size without granting it is to wait for other lots to come available and buy them up and combine them. But I think that would go against the intent of the zoning to ensure conformity within the neighborhood. Because if you look at the overhead view, to your point, all those lots are that same size, and to have one that is an outlier just wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, if half the neighborhood has to be bulldozed before you can have conformity to the zoning, then it doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's a detriment to the neighborhood than it is anything
Sounds
else.
like our zoning doesn't fit the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Infill lots were also identified in our comprehensive plan last year, and, identifying those and providing some opportunities for those. So this follows along with our comprehensive plan as well.
Any other questions for Ron before we open to public comment?
Just one other comment, Ryan, I'll share with you. The lot at Elm and Rice, which is at the end of the alley there, we did, it's in 2013, we did variances there to allow the last modular to be set in Johnstown. And it has basically, it faces Elm, and on the side setback, I believe, is 5. Off the back, I think we were 20. And off of, we had to position it to get it away from the corner, but that required a very similar variance to this. It also had water and sewer to it.
All right. Any further questions for Ron? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and open for public comment. You could, if you could step up there and give us your name and address.
My name is Cheryl Lim. I live at 183 West Jersey Street. We're on the corner of Jersey and Payne. We're the beige house with the garage that is right by the lot.
Okay.
Right here. I don't know the owner. I don't have anything against the owner, but we've been trying to buy this lot since before the house got knocked down that was on it. The previous owner before this didn't own it very long, but it was Jared Reitzel that owned it before. And that's when the house had to be torn down. We had made an offer, and we, even within the last year, I had wanted because his mother would come over and mow the lot. And I said, if you guys ever sell it, please let us know, because we're very interested. That is originally part of our track from back in the day when they had split it up. So we actually have 2 lots. And that is the back half of the original lot. So we would like to buy that, not to build on, but to extend our privacy fence and add to our backyard. So we have shown interest in it over the years. I've talked to Mr. Blair multiple times, but he never called us. Put it up for sale through some kind of company or whatever. So then someone named Danny bought it. And he tried to sell it for $32,000, which I don't know what it appraises for, but I'm pretty sure it's not $2,000. So we didn't buy it. We showed interest, and the amount we were gonna spend wasn't enough for him, so I think it ended up selling for like 25, I believe. Anyway, we have always had interest in it, not to build anything, not to do anything, just to use it like as a garden, as anything in the backyard to like the rest of our. It just, that's how it was supposed to be a long time ago, and we've always shown interest in it. So like I said, I don't have anything against anybody else. But I really don't know that I want a house that far away from our fence either. I mean, there's a lot of stuff jam packed together down that alley anyway already. So it has nothing to do with anybody personally. It's just sad that we've showed interest in putting it back where it always has belonged. And we've gotten no information. It's all about money. People are trying to make money off of it, which I kind of get to a degree, especially if it turns out to be a rental. We don't want a rental beside us, but if it is what it is, then so be it. But that's not fun. We have a rental on the other side of us, and we've had some doozies of people in there, and it's not fun. So however it turns out, if it looks nice, that's great. But we have shown interest in this for the last 14 years.
There was a house on the property when you
That
purchased?
white one.
Okay.
And it went through, I think the bank owned it, and we tried to offer the bank money, and they didn't do it, and then it got torn down. And then the second owner came in, and he didn't take any, just didn't talk to us. Like, we offered, he said, hey, if you ever sell it, please let us know.
Right.
And he didn't. And then we found out he went through a company and sold it, and he sold it for what we would have paid him for it, but he never talked to us about it. So what people do is their own business, but I just want you guys to know that we've shown interest in that for a very long time, not to build anything on it, just to put it back where it belongs.
Right.
So
Have you talked to the current owner? Have you talked to the current owner?
we don't know who the current owner is. We talked to the one that was selling it before this one bought it. He had it for $32,000 originally.
Well, maybe we can get you the contact information for the current owner, and make him an offer. Now's the time, it sounds like.
I mean, you
Yeah.
definitely have that.
Yeah, like I
an
said,
option,
the
but-
last owner, his name was Danny, I think. And he's from some company that I think he lives here in town, but he just moved here, and they had it listed for $32,000. And like I said, I don't know what it appraised for, but I'm pretty sure it's not $32,000, because I think he ended up selling it for 25. It dropped down, so again, we've tried to make. So, you know, nothing against anybody. That's what we've been trying to do.
I can appreciate it. I can
If we
appreciate
approve this variance tonight, that doesn't mean that you can't make him a good offer that is more appealing than building the house too. So something to think about.
Right.
We got the letter, so I figured it's.
Thank you.
I
Thank
can
you.
definitely appreciate it and sympathize with you. I understand. Any specific complaints about this property though, or what he intends to build?
No,
Okay.
just as long as, like I said, I would rather it not be a rental, but. what
I
we
definitely
do is
understand.
not up to us, so.
Yeah, we don't have any codes for that.
But he's building it himself.
That's
Okay.
good. That is good.
Yeah.
Building it himself.
And
It's
I'm-
close to the schools.
I'm sure that's the project he wants to go with, but maybe you guys link up and exchange information and maybe that works out too. So, okay, any other questions? for-
Ryan, I'll just add one thing. Miss Malone, she talked to me about it many times, really. And I tried to, I talked to Mr. Wetzel about it too. And he said, well, if I ever decide to sell it, I'll let her know. And then then he sold it.
And
So,
then he sold it to like some kind of company that,
yeah, I don't know who had it that time.
but they never said a word to it. I'm like, really?
Yep. Real estate market moves and does a lot of crazy things. Yes.
Make money off of it. I get it too, but then it wound up getting sold again. This property had been sold and not done anything with it, sold and not done anything with it. We're just sitting
I can understand. I can understand. Well, any other further public comment on this? Okay, any questions for our public comment or for Ron?
I just want to take a minute and go through the factors for consideration for the variance. But also thank you for coming in tonight, because a lot of the time we don't get any feedback whatsoever. Sure. Yeah.
It's been a thorn for a while.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Thanks for
Alright.
coming in tonight and putting that out there. But looking at 1133, just going through, since there are several questions. For me, I don't, for number one, and we're looking at 113303 F 1 through 7. The property would, in my opinion, yield a reasonable return without the variance, selling as a vacant piece of property, rather than as a property that could be developed upon. But rate of return is really relative to purchase and sale price and what's in between. But a variance isn't necessarily needed here for anything to happen with this lot. I don't necessarily think it's substantial. Looking at the neighborhood in general and how it's lined up and the absolute difference between the minimum requirements and what is being proposed. I think that the character of the neighborhood with putting a home there, especially one that's being proposed as it's being proposed, the variance request that's being asked for this evening would be of benefit, or being sold to anybody else who wanted to combine it as a piece of their property. So somewhat neutral on that one. I don't think the variance would adversely affect the delivery of government services. It was already noted that the property owner purchased the property with the knowledge of the zoning restrictions. The predicament can be feasibly obviated through some other means rather than a variance by meeting the actual requirements. But I think, Ron, you had on your plan there 530 square feet if it met everything specific to what is in there, which is small, but it could be. And whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance, I think that it would, the intent would still be maintained by granting the variance. As I said before, looking at the neighborhood in general, putting a home like this in that space makes sense. The variance requests aren't substantial enough to make a huge difference. And to Jesse's point, I think absolutely, just if a variance is granted this evening, it doesn't necessarily mean anything has to move forward. If some kind of sale would happen thereafter, but it could, as proposed this evening. So for me, looking at all of those factors, it makes sense to grant it, in my opinion.
All right. Making a motion?
I'll make a motion to go ahead and grant variance application Z-21-186.
I'll second. We can have our roll call.
Jesse Koppel,
Yes.
Ben Lee,
Yes.
Ron Dane, Herman Green,
Yes.
John Merriman.
Yes.
All right. Variance carries and we'll go ahead. Like we said, you could still exchange information. That may still happen. I would guess he'll probably want to proceed with the house.
Nothing against anybody, it's just we got the letters.
Yep. All right.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and proceed here with our zoning code ordinance. Definitely understand if you don't want to hang out for that. Might get a little boring. All right, so Articles 38 and 39.
Yeah, just give me 2 minutes and I'll.
That's fine.
find his number.
All right, so site improvements is where we're at.
I forgot to put the appendices in the agenda, but if you guys had any comments on those too, we can take care of those tonight.
Okay, what do we have as far as site improvements? While I come through this old doc.
The notes that I have, 38.01 under general. Second to last, maybe second to last sentence. The owner developer shall be responsible for the cost of all tests required by the village manager. And then I had and or engineer. Whoever, the city engineer. With respect to streets, I didn't know if it was covered anywhere else in here, and it may be under landscaping, but I suggested adding in item E that seeding and sod shall be added for growth in the appropriate growing season for improvements made in the streetscape. And then similar to kind of how we've operated recently, if needed, final payments can be held to ensure proper seeding and landscaping during the appropriate season. So similar to what's happening on South Oregon right now, the project is completed. We're kind of out of the growing season. They're seeding and things right now, but they're gonna have to redo it in the spring anyway, because nothing's really gonna grow. So I just thought that would be a good add.
Yeah, Ben, that's a good point. That's always part of a development contract. Depending on the year, the time of the year, it has to be at least strawed to get you through the winter.
I think it's not gonna hurt to codify, just to put it out there. So there are any
Correct.
questions?
No, I think it's a good idea.
And I've got notes on it. I didn't know if anybody had anything else for that section.
Just a quick one. Should we put a time frame on the section C on streets for when they can put the base down and when they have to put the final coat on?
Right now, the final coat is applied when the project's completed or near completion, 90%.
Yeah.
So it just, that's also part of the developer's contract that whoever's bidding or has got the contract for the project. So, I mean, it doesn't hurt.
I think that might be addressed in the streets and utilities code.
Okay, that they've got a certain amount of time to get in. Obviously, they can't do it in the winter, but
I'd have to check because obviously we don't want to put anything in here that either goes against that code,
yeah.
because that one would supersede this. So let me just double check that.
On the time frame you're talking about is just relative to project completion, right?
Yeah, there's a development and I forget where it was. I thought it was over in Madison County where the developer went under. He had the base coat down. He didn't put his finish coat down. Now we're covered by our bonding, so.
Right, we bond it.
We would end up put it in anyway. And then the only other question I get, and it's really not a question under street signs, such signs shall be purchased from the city. Is that correct? They buy the signs, the street signs from us?
They provide the street signs. I don't think they get them from us. They provide them.
correct.
Should you put something in there that because it says the city shall be responsible for the installation and maintenance, that they have to pay for the installation?
They install.
Yeah, they install.
I mean,
Yeah,
if
then
I-
we
if-
need to
if I-
correct
If
this.
I was gonna say, that's why I was asking, because if I read this, I'd stick it on you.
And as long as they're working in the area, if one of the signs is destroyed or for some reason falls down or whatever, they're responsible for replacing. I just had one replaced in your neighborhood.
Yes, we should probably rephrase that to be the developer shall be responsible for installation and maintenance of the signs until,
I think that would be appropriate. Yes.
until it's dedicated.
Or if you even, so you're saying until when?
Until the village takes over or the city takes over responsibility.
Yeah, until the streets are dedicated.
Because I had called it's Concord East, right over there, Fondrest, is it?
Fondrest.
Where the stop sign was missing and some street signs weren't correct and would get to the
Yeah.
developer, get the developer to get it, to put it in. 'cause
Yeah,
it
we
wasn't.
finally got them fixed.
Yeah,
I think as long as they're building in there, yeah, they should be responsible for it.
Yep. I agree.
Still technically their job site.
And the street signs need to be in there.
Right.
'Cause if anything now, with the amount of deliveries that are happening,
Right. Well, as soon as you have people living there, you're getting Amazon delivery.
Right. yeah,
On Fondrest, they put them up wrong to
Yeah.
the road versus street.
yeah.
Yeah. And those Amazon trucks will drive down the dirt roads. Trying to get through if their GPS tells them. I've seen them stuck in some funny places.
Anything else in 38?
Should the city manager be approving the sanitary changes if they're going to change on that?
Let's say approved by the city manager or their designee.
And hopefully they're designating the city engineer.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that's like multiple steps for like,
I wrote down engineer, but designee probably
yeah,
is fine.
I just think that's multiple steps for a shorter answer somewhere else.
For me, for sanitary and water and A and C and sanitary and A and B and water, just calling out similar to other sections and having Jack validate the metrics that are in there, just to make sure that that's either to current code or to our current standard as it's being applied.
Well, we follow all Columbus codes, except there's some that we supersede
Yeah.
their codes. There's certain things for underground we require, like the copper line to run, so you can identify the pipes.
Yeah. The tracer wire.
Yeah, the tracer wires.
Yeah, the tracer wire.
Need that for sure.
I know the document, I know this is,
Yeah.
this
you
document
need that
itself is
for
10
sure.
years old.
Never be able to-
Right.
And then under water systems, B
Propane. Well,
had a note in here, if we wanted to add at the end or somewhere in that section, that the meter pits are, shall be installed to landscaping grade, not below or covered or buried in any capacity, but to grade unless otherwise agreed by the city manager or designee. Because I know we've had in recent history, several issues with meter pits being buried and then having to be raised before we can accept
Right.
the infrastructure and things like that. I'm not sure why it's a thing.
We had some of those in Concord Crossing East.
Well, over by TSC as well. Can't be cheap to raise those after you've got everything installed. I don't,
No, it's just a box. They just add like more pieces to them.
Yeah.
but it's
Just
more
add it.
work. I don't know
Just
why you
take it
just.
out.
don't-
It's just a riser lift.
Yeah, they just put risers on them. We have different size risers.
That's all I had for site improvement section.
Anyone else have comments for 38? Okay. We can go to 39.
Bailey, the question I had about this is this talking about mixed use,
Like commercial.
commercial and residential combined?
Well, it says non-residential, so I would think like commercial, office,
Commercial office?
maybe medical.
I see. Okay.
That's a short one.
I think, Ben, it'd be something like we would be using these same specs, requirements for like what tech is doing,
Yeah,
the work that's being done at tech.
yeah,
Like basically, if our commerce park was brought to us all as one parcel of land that someone wanted to use to
Yeah.
develop the commerce park.
The biggest call out I had about this is similar to call outs they make when you talk about commercial, industrial, or what have you encroaching on residential areas. So I had in here 39.02 and adding in an F section, which is something akin to sufficient buffering between non-conforming land uses as in residential to commercial and industrial. So shall be integrated at a level deemed sufficient by planning and zoning. Given the intensity and impact of the proposed commercial enterprise and the density and type of housing and the proposed residential, or that is in the residential development, erring on residential protection. Appropriate mitigation tactics shall be entertained to buffer both visual and auditory encroachment. And that's just to make sure that if you have industrial or commercial, which we have buffering codification in our current code and what we have, but I don't think it hurts to state it again. To just continue to emphasize that business friendly, commercial friendly, industrial friendly, but still erring on the residential individual and making sure that it gives planning and zoning some leverage or leeway to decide with the type of housing that you have and the type of commercial that's coming in, what tactics might be needed to lessen any kind of impact to the residential area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because if one of these not neighborhoods, but a subdivision comes in, you're gonna immediately go to your zoning on,
Yeah,
on light manufacturing or whatever's coming in. Probably a mixed use type thing, warehouses, light manufacturing, multiple different uses, but you're gonna go immediately to that section on the buffering, which I think we made pretty clear that buffering is important from residential to
Mhm.
that. That's the most important buffer we have.
we have
So,
residential to agricultural too, which we have an entire chapter even devoted to.
yeah, res to agricultural, that is a whole huge thing, but nobody ever complains about a farm field other than if the fertilizer
The
or
spray,
some sort
spray
of
drift.
chemical ends up on their property. That's the only time they complain about it.
Correct.
Or the
spray drift.
smell
Yeah.
of fertilizer. That's it. But industrial, depending on what it is, you see it every day, you hear it every day, you
Yeah.
smell it every day. So that's totally different. Farm fields are twice a year,
Well, and the agricultural to the residential to agricultural is really more erring on the side of the agriculture and protecting from a right to farm
Right.
perspective. And just ensuring that anybody who purchases those homes along that buffer line is protected
Yeah.
against spray drift and things like that. In this case, it's protecting the residential against encroachment of commercial.
And you're way more likely for the residential to show up in your farm field than you are the farm field to show up
Correct.
next to your residential. So
Yeah, definitely the
So-
exception.
the industrial is a lot more, that could pop up next to you tomorrow.
And the wording I just read, Bailey, I think it's set in the email that I sent to you.
Yeah.
The other one that I suggested adding for this section in G is similar to the call out that I made to New River. When we talked about their COA is where possible and feasible, connections to the walkability of the overall community shall be included in any site plan, allowing for at least walkability to, from, and within the subdivision. Ample thought should be given for multimodal accessibility, but the difficulty that we have now is that if you look at Commerce Park over on 62, there's no, there's no way to get to it besides a vehicle. And I think that was a big miss.
And it has open ditches. There's no place for walks.
You
either.
can't, yeah, huge miss
Yeah, that was
from the beginning.
was,
To where now we're trying to remediate that, that if you had walkability to that space, you know, you may open up to more individuals that could walk there and work there rather than have to catch a ride or what. It's even dangerous riding a bike on 62. So
there's people that work in Commerce Park there and they walk at lunchtime.
yeah,
They always have to walk in the road.
yeah, that's not right. So for this, I think it's where possible, where feasible, try and connect that, continue to promote the walkability. At the very least, the walkability, but I think this will continue to work into our multimodal active transportation, you know, comprehensive plan about just walkability and connectivity. So,
Walkability inside of it's huge too. You gotta think of
Right.
places like, that's a decent sized business park and you got people that want to walk during lunchtime.
Right.
so at least putting it in there to get to promote thought, I don't think is a bad thing.
Any other comments for 39?
I'm good.
It's our last chapter, but then we have 2 appendices. The first appendix is a list of acceptable trees that's provided to us by the Ohio Division of Ohio Department of Natural Resources. They put this out every year or so, so I didn't know this is exactly what they provide us. Does anybody have any comments on Appendix A?
Has our tree committee been through these?
Yes.
I would imagine.
That was my only call out, is just
Yeah.
making sure they get a chance to go over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have been through this, and then every time ODNR sends us an updated list, they get updated with that list as well.
Yep, as long as tree committee and as long as they sign off, I mean, I skimmed it, but I couldn't tell you exactly what every tree looks like.
And then Appendix B is our street and roadway classification system. It's just sort of provides some definitions on what the types of streets are, and then provides some measurements and notes on those. This is it's a pretty standard document for municipalities. I don't think there's many changes throughout. Our engineers obviously review this and provide their recommendations as well.
One thing on that, because I deal with these a lot, is there a way to put on the major collectors what actual streets there are as major collectors?
Like within,
So, yeah, in the document, I mean, you don't want to list all the secondary and tertiary streets, but the major collectors would be what, 62 and 37?
That's a good
yeah, I think we
idea.
can do that.
Jersey.
No problem.
Good idea.
Maybe Jersey. Edwards, maybe.
Yeah, Jersey and Edwards.
My only call out for this section was just Bailey and the engineers, their professional opinion and review to make sure that it conforms to what we've outlined already, and that it's in a format that makes sense for inclusion within the document.
The end.
All right.
Slow clap.
Great job, guys. All right.
Slow clap.
All right.
45 minutes.
Yeah,
right.
Other business, what do we have in there? Anything, next meeting?
Next meeting, you guys are gonna have a conditional use for the property at the corner of 37 and Douglas, as well as a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed property for the new ACE building. And please remember that our next meeting is on Wednesday, December 1st, which is a week from tomorrow, not Tuesday,
Yep. Everybody good with that?
same time.
All right.
Saw the new sign in front of the old church down there.
Yeah, we had one
Advertising.
planning too for the
It's a lot of
variance.
pain too.
Love it. I saw it, grabbed my eye. I looked over and I was like, oh yeah. I remember
great.
talking about that.
That's great. I mean, that's what we
Yeah.
needed. So, I mean, if if all the contiguous properties get a letter and then everybody who drives through there sees that, they don't have a problem.
And Bailey, I was gonna suggest too, next time we order them, let's order double face.
Oh,
And then they
yeah.
could turn them the other direction.
Right.
So you actually see it when you're going by.
Remind me of that.
And when you write, I don't know if you can get any bigger block letters or something like that, or the bigger side of a permanent marker. Like I could tell and I knew what it was for, but just as you're driving by
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah, it's basically when it's facing the
Yeah.
street too.
we'll fine tune it, but I was just happy to see it. So I appreciate that. And if I could ask with the document, what is the next step here with the zoning code?
Let me go through and address all the comments and check in with our other departments. I know I need to check in with Jack on a couple of things and the fire department on a couple of things. And then I will bring it back to planning and zoning for their recommendation to council.
It won't get recommended. And it won't be done this year.
I don't see myself having
No.
enough time to get it back to you by the first.
Council's not in the position to
Yeah.
do anything with it
Council's
right now.
Last meeting is December 7th as well, so.
Yeah.
It's a Q1 of 22.
But
Yeah.
I'll get those questions out there to them in the sections that they need to review. I know our attorney needs to review a few things as well, so I'll get those out there to them and.
Thank you for your help on getting everything together and walking us through.
I have a question for Teresa. Teresa,
Yes.
when do we have to have everything submitted in for ordinance changes for to be published online? Do you know what month that is of the year
It's usually March or April,
of the next year?
but are you asking?
We
Yeah,
can,
for
we can do it
whatever
off
we-
cycle too, Jim. We
Pardon
don't-
me?
We can do it off
Yeah,
cycle.
we've done off-cycle ones.
Okay,
before.
well, I was going to say, since this is completely a new
Oh.
document, I just wanted to make sure we got it online as soon as, and it had to fit in that window of opportunity.
This would be,
I don't know,
Your
council
next
might want to go through it all too.
Yeah.
Then we.
Yeah,
can do
yeah,
that.
man.
And we can do that, Ben and Ryan.
this is my second time going
I
through
don't
it.
think Ben and I have to go through it a second time. I think it's just everybody else.
We'd have to go through it a second time.
We'll
just
have
have
to
to sit
just
there.
listen to what
You
they
just have to
say
sit
as we
there.
go through it.
We've only been working on it for 4 years, over 4 years.
I only forget what the front of it says now.
Right.
First half, what is the first half even saying?
We paid,
It's perfect.
we paid a consultant $10,000 for the first year,
Yeah.
work on it with us, so.
All right. Well, nothing else in other business then? Anything good coming to Johnstown? Bad coming to Johnstown?
No. I don't-
All right. We'll go ahead and make a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Look, I remembered it.
That's.
You can just get up and just say, oh, yeah, we're looking at
Yeah.